Thank you, Sarah. At the bottom of my paper on the printout, it says, from Edward Arlington Robinson, we die of what we eat and drink, but most we die of what we think. That was kind of interesting. I just read it. Tonight, we have the fortune of having someone that I'm lucky enough to be working on the FOTS committee with. Don't know a lot about this person, but I was able to hear him share last year at the conference. And because of that, as soon as I had the opportunity to be in this position, I thought, I'm gonna get Mark. And when I saw him on the conference, the committee meeting, I hollered at him. And here he is. And I've talked to him a little bit since I asked him, and I think he's gonna be quite a good share for us right now. Go ahead, Mark.
Can you hear me? We good? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Mark, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is February the 15th, 2006. I have a home group, and that home group is called the No Reservations Group, and we meet in Niwot, Colorado. And Niwot, Colorado, or Gun Barrel, I guess, is where we're really at, is north of Boulder on your way to Estes Park. And if you're ever in the area, Wednesday at 6:30, you are all welcome to come. We'd love to have you. And we're lucky enough to have an Al-Anon meeting at the same time that meets downstairs. So we're a very, very blessed group. I have a sponsor. Actually, he's on here. And he has a sponsor, and my sponsor knows that I am his sponsee, and he is my sponsor, and we talk on a regular basis. And he's just absolutely amazing. And I have been very lucky ever since I moved to Denver in 2003 to have had some of the most incredible sponsorship I've ever heard of through anybody. And you know, when I look back in kind of the rearview mirror of my past, I am always amazed at how God has taken care of me, even when I haven't felt like that's been going on. Dawn, I really want to thank you for asking me to do this tonight. And I didn't know what I was in for, and I mean that wholeheartedly. And I have been listening to this meeting now kind of shortly after it started, but I don't usually, I listen because my wife's usually on it, and I listen from the background. And I've heard some of the most amazing things on this meeting, and I've always thought, my gosh, you know, that really fits. Some of that really fits. Some of that really fits. And but I was kind of a spectator in this deal. And I was listening to everybody else's experience and not thinking how it really applied to my own life. So Dawn asked me to share tonight, and the next day she sent me an email, and she sent me the emotional sobriety essay, and I printed it out, and I thought to myself, well, I better start reading this thing and maybe dig into it a little bit to really see what it says. And the other thing that was kicking around in my head was, you know, it's kind of funny that she asked me to do this because, and this is what I really kind of didn't want to start sharing tonight, was because I don't want to really, is that, you know, I'm 15 years sober and coming up on 16 years sober. And the last 4 years of my life hasn't been very great. You know, it has not been happy, joyous, and free, skipping through the roses. And darn it, it is far, you know, and looking back when I first got sober, even the first 5 years, I mean, there were great things happening really fast, great jobs, relationships, sobriety. I saw the colors change, and it was just, I look back at it as it's just absolutely was an amazing time. And you know, about 4 years ago, things started happening, life really started happening. And these dependencies that Bill talks about in the essay started being ripped away, and my security started getting threatened, and these dependencies I didn't even know I had. And because when I was introduced to this essay from my first sponsor, I thought, that's really great. That means I'm going to start having emotions in sobriety. You know, it doesn't say emotional sobriety. It says, I mean, having emotions of sobriety says emotional sobriety. And so anyways, so I started on this journey, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to share at this meeting, because I'm not really in a good space, and I don't have much of a solution here. I don't have much of a solution, and how can I go and share at this thing without having like a full story, meaning like how things were and how things and how I came out of it, and how do I share when I haven't really even come out of this darkness yet. So I got the essay, and I printed it out, and you know, the first paragraph, it says, I think that many oldsters who put our AA booze cure to the severe but successful test. And I stopped for a second when I read that, and what it was saying to me was that, and then I kept reading, they often lack emotional sobriety. Perhaps they will be the spearhead for the next major development in AA. And what I read when I printed it out and I read it, and what I heard and what I felt was, Mark, you're okay. Because I've been trying to wrap my head around the idea of feeling the way I feel with 15 years of sobriety. And what am I doing wrong? You know, I have a sponsor, and I work with that sponsor, and I have a service commitment that I'm doing with Dawn and some others, and I have sponsees, and I have all this stuff that I'm doing. And there have been a lot of moments in the last 5 years that I really have not been okay. So before I even, I kind of like to start with this little story because I heard it from my mom, and my mom told me it, and I had a couple years of sobriety, and she told me about the time she came to pick me up from preschool, and she walked inside to the front desk, and she asked for me. She said, "Mom, I'm here to pick up my son Mark," and I was 4 years old, and they said, "We don't have a Mark here." And she looked around, and she goes, "Oh, there he is." And I was over doing something, and they said, "Oh, he told us his name was George." And she told me this story when I was a couple years sober, and it just so rang true to me, because that's the way I felt before I started drinking. I wanted to be somebody different. I wanted to be in somebody's home, different home, doing something different, playing with their toys because they looked happy. And as far as I can remember, I just didn't feel like I fit in. And I would much rather be George than Mark. And so that was the way I felt. And that's what I remember pretty much all the way until I drank. My family was pretty normal. We moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico in 1979. And we moved there because my father was a doctor. He was an OBGYN, and he was going to start practice. And the whole family was behind my dad. And if it was about him and his business and being successful. It was about, at the time we moved to Santa Fe, we were still shopping at Goodwill, but we had high hopes that things were going to get better and things were going to be okay. And they were. And my dad started the practice, and he worked with another physician, and there weren't very many OBGYNs in Santa Fe, and people started to know who he was. And I started hanging out with my dad, and I started putting my dad on this pedestal. I wanted to be just like my dad, but there was this part inside of me that didn't measure up, that didn't feel like he was good enough, didn't feel like he fit in. And I idolized my dad, and I just wanted to be like him. And and it was over the years, it just grew. it grew, the idolization of a man, because he came and he started, and he was a real, and he is a really good doctor, and people loved him, and he helped so many people, and I just and then there was my mother, and my mother was at home, and she's just stunningly beautiful. And she took care of my brother and I when we came home, and she made dinner. And my dad was never around; he was always delivering babies, but she was always there. And something about my mom, and I had this connection with my mother, and it was like this security blanket. And I was in first, second, third grade, and I would go to school, and I was just, I could not stand the psychic torture of being me, and I would come up with all these random lies about not feeling good so I could go home. That was just always the typical kid thing, but it was a lot more than that. It was more like my hamster died, because they would say, "Why are you crying, Mark?" And I'd have to come up with some story or something to be able to go home to my mom where I felt secure. And that was just the way I was. And I don't really like to talk about that much, because that kind of makes me feel like a wimp, right? That's kind of like I'm supposed to be tough. I'm supposed to be the guy that could pull himself up by the bootstraps and carry on. And but my truth was, when I was a kid, I just wanted to be my mom, and she was secure. She was security. My dad was never around, and when he was around, he was tired and grumpy, and he didn't show up very well, and she was my safety net. And so, that's kind of my childhood. It wasn't bad, you know. It wasn't. I wasn't being beaten. I wasn't being starved. There were clothes on our back. We had things given to us that a lot of kids didn't. But I had this thing, some people call it like this God-sized hole, right? Or whatever. It's this this guy that I used to go and talk to in Aurora sometimes would talk about this spiritual malady, right? And like this, and when I think about being a kid, that's what I had before I started drinking. I started drinking. My first experience with well, my not my first, but my first time I got drunk, I was 13 years old, and we drank gin and tonics and ate pork rinds. And it didn't go so well, uh, and got really sick. And I'm just going to say that I'm a real alcoholic. And what that means to me is that, like, when I have one drink, I have another, and if I don't, it's damn near torture. And then no matter what happens to me when I get drunk, I forget about it. And I decide that the next time will be different. Or what usually happened was I just didn't care anymore, and I just drank. And so I started drinking at 13 years old, and and um, had all the drama and all the consequences that we have by the time I was 17 years old, and I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was kind of my first journey with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I did a lot of reconnaissance visits, y'all, in and out and in and out for till I was 29 years old. And, within that, like 15 or 16 years, I caused a lot of chaos in my family. I had this mother and my father, and they were, you know, they absolutely never gave up on me and my brother. And so, and no matter what, they would try to pick us up. They'd put us in some place to detox, and they would say, go to AA, and they'd just be there all the time. And, the day kind of finally came, and I don't know if how it happens. And I don't know if I'll ever get it figured out, but, after in and out of asylums, as Bill says, and sanitariums, trips to the country and back, frothy emotional appeals from everybody, I ended up in Denver, Colorado, in a 3-quarter white house. And this guy, Rick G, said, get in the car. And I got in the car, and nothing's ever been the same. That is like God returning me to sanity when I question the existence of God, is how that happened. Every human power was taken for me to get sober, and nothing worked. And one day I was in a 3/4 way house. Somebody said, get in the car. I got in the car. He took me to a meeting, and nothing else has ever been the same. I heard a guy at a meeting, and he was talking about the big book, and he talked about being the son he never could be because of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he talked about being an employee that he always wanted to be. And I ended up in Denver, and I had 2 trash bags and an old hoopty car, no job. And this guy was talking about something that really mattered to me, because I had a daughter that I couldn't show up for 5 years at this point. And not being able to show up for your daughter is a special kind of torture that I can't even explain when you really want to. And so I asked this gentleman to be my sponsor, and he sat down with me and he read the black on the white. And when it said to pray, we prayed, and made amends for all the things that I'd stolen and all that type of stuff, all the tornadoes that we were when we were drinking. And I have to tell you that my life started getting really better. I wasn't the quick type, right? Slowly but surely. Like, I didn't get the big jobs and the new cars and the girlfriends. But what I did was I got sober, and I started going through the steps, and I started feeling better about life and who I was on this planet. And I started getting a relationship with God, and I started depending on this God for direction. And I started understanding that by carrying the message to others was the solution, and the solution for permanent recovery. And my family got back together, and that's really kind of like a big thing, right? Like, the family's reunited, and the daughter that wouldn't see me started hanging out with me and seeing me. My parents wanted to spend time with me, the parents that wouldn't let me on their property unless they're, and I got these things back. Or I even got things that I never even had, and I never even knew I wanted. And I started walking around this earth and of being of service and feeling useful in the world again. And I had lived my daughter is like, the was the one thing that was like this amazing thing in sobriety that also showed the traditions. And what I started doing, and I would have to go down once an hour every weekend, and that's about all she would see me. And very slowly and patiently, I'd go on Saturday and I'd spend an hour, and the next weekend I'd spend an hour, and the next weekend I'd spend 2 hours, and the next weekend I'd spend 3 hours. And there's a relationship blossomed, and it was this sign to me that I was doing things right. And she was excelling in school, and everything was going good. And she went off to college, and she met this boy. And this boy and her decided to go off to Oklahoma with some marijuana, and they got in some trouble. The reason I mention that is because what happens, it says in page 4, it says suddenly, right? Because there wasn't a cloud on the horizon. I had all this stuff going on, and suddenly, right? My basic flaws, that I had a dependence, almost absolute dependence, and I had put a dependence on my daughter. And it was the first time that I felt powerlessness in sobriety like I had felt and with alcohol, that there was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could do to help, that I had completely failed, that God had totally screwed me, and that I wasn't worth anything anymore. And it was an overwhelming sense of like this self-worth being ripped out of me. And without even knowing it, I'd placed it on this relationship. And to make a long story short, that was the first introduction to this this essay because I called second introduction because I called my friend David H. in Broomfield because I knew his kid had had some trouble, and he introduced me to this idea that maybe I had this dependence on my daughter, and that maybe that's not where dependence should come from. And so that was my first experience with the layer of the onion, if you want to say, where you're cruising through sobriety and all of a sudden everything's uprooted. All of the things that you thought were secure are no longer your belief systems, um, the thing that started happening was that I started being able to meet my daughter with where she was at, with the help of God, and she started. And the other thing that started happening, honestly, is that she started being okay. She got through that big hump in life, and she started doing whatever she had to do in order to start feeling better and doing better. And I went on with my merry way. And what I mean by that was that I kind of put out of my mind that I had this dependence and what it had felt like for it to be gone, and or this dependence to be ripped away, and to feel like I was sitting there without any God, without any faith, without anything, without any security. And I'd forgotten it because my daughter started doing better, and I learned a lot from that, though, and I'm not to say that it did, that moment where I worked the steps with David and we really focused on these dependencies and where my security comes from, didn't change me, because my relationship with my daughter now is so different, and I allow her to make mistakes like I never did. And so it's not that didn't help. But it was like this stepping stone to kind of where I'm at now, because about a year later, I was packing up my tools to leave from the shop to go tune a piano, and my dad called, and he calls, and which is cool, and I answered the phone, and basically all he could say was, "Your mom died." And so, and this was the lady that through my whole life was like the steadfast person. Like when things got really bad in drinking, I called her. When my dad didn't want anything to do with us, my brother and I, my mother would still help us. And so when my dad called me that day and told me that my mother had died, it was just like an amazing thing. And she died really suddenly, and there was no sign, no nothing, and she died. And it just set forth this whole chain of events of knowing that there are two things that happen a lot in our family, and that is alcoholism and dementia. And so my dad was getting in his later 70s, and it was just absolutely devastating to the whole entire family. And I can't tell you, none of us knew what the kind of how my mom held the family together and what that was going to look like. And so it was like my brother, my dad, and I just absolutely just lost. And that's kind of where things started getting a little weird for me in sobriety. I was 11, 12 years sober, and I had never faced the idea that there may be a point where they're not here. My parents weren't here, and my daughter's not here. She's living her life, and it was just going to be me and God. And it's pretty scary, actually. But it was just so chaotic, because in the next year or so we had to move my dad up to Boulder, and he's and the reason he moved up here was to live in an independent living place that also has assisted living and memory care, and he's in really good shape, and so there wasn't much to worry about. He was maybe a little forgetful, but it really was more just how sad he was. And And so I lost my mom, and these two people in my life that I idolized growing up. These people were bigger, larger than life, and my mom was gone, and my dad's memory was going, um, and all of these things, all the security that I had placed, was disappearing, and so. Um, I was sitting in my car on a Wednesday afternoon, and I was 10 stepping with my sponsor, and um, my sponsor and I talk a lot about God and our relationship with God and my relationship with God, because most of the time I have to tell you my Achilles heel in this deal is the second step. At some point in this deal, I decide that God's not big anymore, and I put God in a box, and I get pretty agnostic, and so we often talk about God, and we often talk about the second step, and when I get into hard situations, I often find myself with God in a box, and God's not big enough. And my sponsor was asking me a question. His question was, Mark, do you think God's going to take care of you through this, through the grief of your mother? And I said, yeah, God's going to take care of me. And they said, do you think God's going to take care of your dad? And then there was this resounding no in my head. Like, God didn't take care of my mother, and so therefore he's not going to take care of my father. I'll do a better job. And I didn't know it until like this morning, but at that moment, sitting behind King Supers talking to my sponsor, at that moment cracked something open, because I realized that without God, I'm screwed. And I would never been as lonely as I felt at that moment in the car, when I realized that I didn't trust God like I had said I was trusting God. And I had talked about, uh, you know, that I felt safe and protected and all of these things. But my sponsor asked me that question, and I had an unresounding, unequivocal, no, God's not going to take care of my dad. I think I'll do a better job. Just ask him to get the hell out of the way. But it cracked me open in a way, and I didn't even really know it did at the time, because ever since that moment, it's been pretty dark. And I've been on this journey, and since then, and I'm going through the steps again, right? And the reason I'm going through the steps again is because I don't have that power, and I don't really have that trust in this power. I believe I'm acting pretty poorly. I have a temper, and I can bite people's heads off. I can be the nicest guy in the world until I'm not. But so here I am. I am in Alcoholics Anonymous, thank goodness. I have all of my ducks in a row. I'm checking my boxes, as my friend Derek said. I've got a sponsees. I've got home group, going to my home group. I don't have a service commitment, but that's okay. I've been doing so much of that, I don't really need that. And my wife's got a big service commitment, so that should count for two of us, right? Because it's really big. And here I am, coming to the realization that I don't trust God in the way that I thought I trusted God 24 hours before. And I'm really lonely. And then all of a sudden COVID happens, and I have this falling out. I freak out, and I have kind of this falling out with one of my best, dearest friends over something I just screamed at him about. COVID happens, and I'm sitting in my room where I'm sitting right here, and my wife is downstairs on Zoom doing some service stuff. And I don't know what the hell's going on, Like, my mom died. My dad, I can't see now because of COVID. His memory's going. I have no idea how to take care of this man, who I have decided I need to take care of because God's not big enough. I'm at home, my job's secure, but I'm not entirely sure. and I can't even go to my home group. And one of the men I love dearest in this world is really mad at me. And that's with 14 years of sobriety, and I didn't think about drinking. I didn't even think about blowing my head off, right? But all I could think of is like, this is it. Like, this is where I'm fucking supposed to be, right? Like, and and that was early in COVID. That was probably April or March of COVID. And I didn't really see any of what I'm going to start talking. I mean, even really any of what I'm talking about until about the last 8 days. And I haven't really been able to really put it into words. It's just been going on. I've just been kind of like, I can't say trudging because that just means walking. I've been slogging through recovery and for the last few years. And so that's why I'm like, this is all pretty new stuff. But I was sitting in the same room, but it was on a different night, in maybe in March and or in April, and the phone rings, and it's my friend Tim Hebert, and Tim H, sorry, that's whatever. Anyways, and he was sharing thoughts last year, and Tim Hebert calls me up and he says, "Hey Mark, I need some help," and I'm like, "All right, well actually I don't have a service position. What do you need?" And he says, "Will you be speaker host?" And I said, "Yeah, I've never done it. I'll figure it out. Absolutely. I haven't been on the committee for a few years. I need something to do, and fine, I'll absolutely do it." In the end of it, when in the beginning of when Don sent me this essay, I didn't even know if I was going to have a solution or an ending to this story because I'm still kind of in the midst of it. And what I didn't know at that time when I said yes to Tim about being the speaker host chair is like, God had his arms around me, if you want to say, in a way. There's no secret to like this program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And because in the end of the essay, it starts talking about working with other people and being a service, right? So Tim asked me to be the speaker host chair, and I had, it was a lot, and I had to reach out to people I didn't know and make plans and do things, and I had to go towards the resistance, and I had to start going to committee meetings again, and I just fell back in love with Fellowship of the Spirit, and I fell in love over Zoom during COVID. And I fell in love with my home group, and things started changing. And I don't know if this makes any sense to anybody, but all of a sudden I started wanting to go to AA again. And so I kind of lost my train of thought, but I'm glad because it's getting close to 7:15, so that might be okay. I very rarely have the ability to see God working instantly in my life. It's kind of what I was thinking about this whole thoughts thing. I have felt like even tonight, I'm talking about how hard my life in the last 4 years have been. I've been through a lot of grief and a lot of loss and a lot of uncertainty and ups and downs, and we've all been through COVID, and in some ways, I have felt very alone through this process, thinking that I didn't have a relationship with God, that I didn't trust the God that I thought I trusted so much. And I sat this morning, and I tune pianos for a living, and during Christmas time, I get to go to just about every God shop around and tune pianos. And I get to go to the Catholic Church, and I get to go to the Presbyterian Church, and I get to go to the Methodist Church, and I tune their pianos. And it has always been a kind of a tradition of mine to take 5 minutes after the tuning to sit in the church. And so today I was tuning the piano in the First Methodist Church of Lafayette, Methodist Church, and I had this voice come to me and it said, "Why don't you just sit after this? Why don't you sit after you're done working instead of going to work more? Why don't you just sit like you used to? Before life got so complicated and so busy that you have to go back to your other job. And why don't you just sit like you used to, Mark?" And and this is kind of like, I'm trying to not cry, but it was like this moment where I realized after reading this essay and reading the last part of this essay, where it basically says this isn't a gimmick, right? Like it says, like, oh gosh, where was it? I found I had to exert, that's not the right page. I'll get it. Here we go. In my first 6 months of my own sobriety, I worked hard with many alcoholics. Not one responded. It wasn't a question of those alcoholics giving me anything. My stability came out of trying to give, not out of demanding that I receive. When I answered the phone and Tim asked me to be the speaker host, I didn't know that that was what God was setting me up for. He was setting me up to be able to just give, to give more, to get a little bit more in the boat, because that's what I need. I need to have my stability came out of trying to give. It didn't come out of what I was going to receive. And so as I was sitting there, in this room, and I was feeling so lonely and like I was never being taken care of during any of it, I was taken care of through all of it. And I had that epiphany today, and it really gave me some hope, because it's been a long journey in the last few years, and I didn't know if there was a way out. I didn't know that Bill had written this. Somebody had read it to me, but I hadn't heard it. I didn't know that at 15 years of sobriety, I was just where I was supposed to be, and that, it was just so shocking to me that I was okay, because I've been so busy trying to figure out where I was broken that I forgot to see that God was taking care of me. I stopped just for a second, earlier, and I was like, I wonder what frontier means, like the next frontier, right? Because all I think of is Star Trek, right? And that's probably not what Bill was thinking was Star Trek. So I looked it up, and the definition that came was a limit, the extreme limit of settled land beyond which is wilderness. And the other one was an extreme limit of understanding. This experience with looking at this essay and going through the process and looking at what I've been going through is really, really I feel has changed me today. I don't know quite yet how, or what it's going to look like, or if tomorrow is just going to be another day of slogging through the mud. But I doubt it, because I'll be able to look in the rearview mirror and see what God did for me today, and how he opened my eyes just long enough and opened my ears just long enough to be able to hear this essay and to feel okay. And so, that okay, Dawn? I think that's all I got.
I think that's wonderful, and I loved your definitions. And I was reading something today. I've been reading some Carl Jung stuff, and he talks about what I read today, and in the part about meeting the soul, where he has this vision of where he goes into the desert, and it's an arid place, and he has to sit in the desert and wait for God inside his own soul. And I was just reminded of that when you said the wilderness, and I passed beyond the limits of my own understanding. And when we're able to go there and be, even when it doesn't, it doesn't feel good. It's foreign, it's arid, it's all those things. And that you're being held while you're there, even though you don't even know it. So I was really, thank you. As you may know, we have a tradition in this group that the leader calls on a few people. So I'm going to pass it back to the torch back to you for a few minutes.
Oh, well, I'm looking. Oh. Derek, Frederick, Colorado.
Should I turn my video off? Thanks, Mark. My name is Derek. I'm an alcoholic. Great job. Love you, brother.
Love you.
Good to be on here. I've had the privilege of watching Mark and being with Mark through a lot of these experiences. And I remember where I was and what I was doing the day I got the call that Tyler had been arrested, and what I was doing when I got the call that your mom had died, and just all of this stuff, and really trying to be there for you through it all, and at the same time not really knowing how to be there for you through it all. I think I am challenged as a friend to not always know what to say and what to do and how to be in the relationship, and probably haven't done a very good job of that many times, I think. One thing that struck me was how you articulated how you've been trying to do God's job with your dad. Like, I don't think that I've realized that. And I don't know if it's because you didn't articulate it before, or I just didn't catch on, but it kind of makes sense. And it gives me pause to look at what situations in my life I am consciously or not saying, that's okay, God, I can do a better job than you, and wind up just getting myself all bound up and in a tight spot, I think that's very prudent for you to have said and for me to now look at. And mostly I just want to say I love you, and I'm honored to call you friend, and to see the man that you have become, and that you have been able to show up in your dad's life the way that you wanted to, in your daughter's life the way that you wanted to. You've been a good husband and a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and of great service to the Fellowship of the Spirit Conference. And I'm also honored to call you home group member. And shout out to No Reservations. That's all I got. Thanks. Love you.
Stuart Richardson.
Hey, everybody, I'm Stuart Richardson, and I am an alcoholic. I'm going to leave my video off. I'll turn it on just for a second, but I live in a little town in the foothills of Colorado, and internet is challenging here. But I don't have my beard anymore, but this is me. Hey, it's good to see everybody. I've come here, and I found out my friend Mark was going to be talking, and it's always nice to see a new format, to visit, to learn about new people, and so I'm just honored to be here. The concept of emotional sobriety, is definitely, that it's definitely one that gives me pause. And I think it's amazing. It's amazing to me that I've heard the essay a few times, but I really tried to listen to it tonight in a different way. And then hearing Mark's kind of vision of it or his interpretation of it, it does amaze me that the solution to emotional sobriety and the solution to me staying sober, are the same thing, and that is to give. And the piece that I think that I don't always do a very good job about is not expecting anything in return, even if it's just to stay sober, even if it's just to feel good for a minute. And Mark, your story and your even though I've gotten a really front row seat to all of it, there's pieces you don't even tell, and hearing all those things is an amazing glimpse into another human being, and allows me, the connection of human beings, in my opinion, is personally what allows me to see the joy in life, and to have purpose and to feel connected, which is really what keeps me sober. And that connection with the higher power and how that all intertwines in with that is just an amazing thing. And thank you for letting me hear your story in a different way. And it's really nice to meet all you guys. Hey, Tom and Juanita. It's really good to see everybody.
Thanks,
Hi,
Stuart.
Sarah. Thanks.
Thanks, Stuart. Speaking of Sarah Nicholson.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah. I'm an alcoholic. Well, I don't even know what to say. Thank you. You did a great job there, dear. And I love you very much. I think, what I think of most of all is like just getting to walk alongside Mark with a lot of that stuff that's, happened is a privilege. And I think any sort of relationship with God is always this, I don't know, it's like any other relationship, there's so many parts about it. And what I see is this ability to just keep showing up no matter what's happening, like if I'm going to have a relationship like with God or with my stepdaughter or with my husband or whatever, you have to show up no matter what. And when it's great, when it's not, like all those things. And then I too really related to everything that was being said about dependencies, like that you don't even know you have. Like that's the thing that really struck me from your talk, was like, you don't even know you have it until, your kid gets arrested and you need her to act right. And then there you are, like once again, like how'd that happen? I will also say though, like just from the seat I get to sit in, like I see somebody who tries harder than anybody I know to show up and have a redo that we get to have in this life, being sober. And that is a beautiful thing that I feel really blessed to get to watch, and I see just care and kindness of a dad. And that is really special. And it's Alcoholics Anonymous and God. And that's, I don't have words for it, actually, getting to watch Mark's journey. And I'm grateful, because I was the kid, I'm the person who couldn't show up for Thanksgiving dinner. It's like, I couldn't do it, I couldn't show up when I was drinking, and I don't know if I'm making any sense at all, but I really was struck by the dependencies piece, like being blindsided by this thing that you didn't realize you had, which can be anything. And I think that's the God stuff. It's like another thing gets ripped away. So you get, it's not pleasant, it's not fluffy, right? It's like huge emotional displacements and rearrangements, but it's like this, on the other side of it is this very clean intention to try to be who God would have you be, which is really cool. So thank you.
Still me picking?
You go for one more, and then I'll do the drill for you.
Actually, I would like to hear from Kate Reaney. R.
I'm Kate, I'm an alcoholic. Oh, wow. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for your share. And, you're one of my heroes in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I really mean that. My experience of you is someone that teaches me an awful lot about humility. For me, you humbly walk this path in Alcoholics Anonymous, but you're someone that does it with an awful lot of integrity and really does the deal. There's some that are in the limelight a lot more than others, but you've always been someone quietly in the background that's really doing this deal. So thank you for your example. And one of the things I love about you too is your dry sense of humor. You've got such a great sense of humor, and it comes across. But I loved listening to your story tonight because, we've known each other a long time, but just like Stuart was saying, there's parts of you that I didn't know, and I too, like as Sarah was mentioning, I loved what you were talking about those dependencies, because for me, dependencies have been something I didn't know I had until they got removed. And then I knew I had them, man. And you should watch me. I'm really creative. You should watch me work to try and put them back together. They go a certain way so that I'm okay. And what I've really come to learn, and you touched on this tonight, Mark, what I've really come to learn too for myself is my dependencies is where my agnosticism shows up. Because in this area of my life, I don't truly trust that God's going to take care of me. And so I come up with the idea that I'm going to give him a little hand. Doesn't always look that great, but it's pretty interesting. But for me, my experience has been too that on the back side of those dependencies, there's an awful lot of freedom. But I wish I could get there more gracefully than I do. And the truth is, when those things have been, I heard someone say one time, there is no pain in surrender. There's only pain leading up to surrender. And that's very much been my experience, because when I've been placed in a position where those things, I was surrendered, that's when that freedom comes. And I heard that in your story tonight. So thank you. And thank you for all of your service that you do. And I too wish it would count when someone else did service and I was like joined to them, like you were talking about with Sarah. I'm like, I got a lot of friends in my home group that are like doing service. That's good, right? Apparently not. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for great.
You're on mute.
I'm going to call on Maria from Tampa.
Hey, Don. Here I sit. I'm Maria, an alcoholic from Tampa, sitting in my car at CVS because I don't want to get out and miss a minute of this. That was fantastic, Mark. I love the part when you're talking about your daughter and meeting her where she's at. That was really powerful for me. And I have a daughter that just need to keep meeting her where she's at. And then not real good experiences with a daughter that's no longer here and died of this disease. So that's been tough. But I'm still here. I didn't drink over it, which I find truly miraculous, truly miraculous. So I'm just glad I'm here. I love this meeting. I saw everybody just chatting. This is a great meeting, and I'm really grateful to be here. So I'm not going to leave this car until it's over. Thank you.
Thank you. And how about Tom and Juana?
Hey, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Mark. That was fantastic. It really was. I was going to tell you that one of the litmus tests is when Juanita will actually put down her knitting to clap. That really means something. I mean, that's a big deal. She won't do that for everybody, but I thought it was fantastic. It just reminded me of all sorts of stuff. You know, when we were at your and Sarah's wedding, which was really an honor to be invited to that. And, you know, it was a community thing. It was a FOTS community deal. And we were just talking about that, thinking about that, and that we love you both an awful lot, you know, and we couldn't have a better chairman for next year, you know. And I'm highly invested in this deal. You might realize this will be my 30th in a row if I live to get up there, but I think it'll be one of the best motherships we've ever had. You know, we just a day ago, we lost our electric power for almost 24 hours. And it's, somebody said it, you know, there's an old blues song, you don't miss your water till your well runs dry, you know. Well, you don't miss your electric until there's no internet, there's no lights and no heat, no refrigerator, you know. And Juanita did pretty well. She started lighting candles and stuff. And I was freaking out. I wasn't good with it at all. You know? So yeah, there are these dependencies. We just 2 weeks ago, it will be 2 weeks ago, starting tomorrow, a bunch of us did a workshop in New Orleans, and we called it, we had to quit playing God because it didn't work. And then subtitled, The Spiritual Life is Not a Theory, We Have to Live It. And what I was thinking about just now is that, you know, we had to quit playing God because it didn't work, but that doesn't mean that we can quit playing God in one fell swoop. You know, I think that quit playing God is a lifetime endeavor, you know, and because like people have said, I don't even know when I am playing God. I don't even know what I am dependent on, you know. Koyas used to say, how do you know what you don't know? You know, and the answer is you don't know what you don't know till you know what you don't know, you know, and more is revealed, you know. So I think, you know, we slog along, we do the best we can, you know, and some days are better than others, you know. We try to help other people, and that gets us out of ourselves. And that's the key to the whole thing. Dr. Bob told us that, you know. So this is one of the best of the Thursday nights. And I know that because Juanita put her knitting down. So thanks, Mark.
Mark, when I listen to a fifth step, I have my knitting. When I put my knitting down, their eyes get huge. You know, like, oh my God, now I'm in for it. You know, I really did like it. You know, I remember you guys coming down and having lunch at the, God, it makes me want to cry just remembering this, and I have no idea why. But we met you and Sarah and your daughter at the La Fonda for lunch. And it was just a really nice little special time with you. You know, it was wonderful. And what you said about, I've been listening to this thing, this whole emotional sobriety thing, you know, pretty much since Sam started it online. And it's been interesting because there's been levels to it, you know, there's been levels of going deeper and deeper and deeper. And when you were talking about your daughter and, you know, the dependency on her, it got me thinking about how my youngest daughter isn't going to be coming for Christmas to Santa Fe. And I was really bummed. And it was just like, and I thought, well, I guess I won't put up a tree. And, you know, because not even recognizing that as a dependency, you know, I mean, how stupid is that? To me, it's like, that's so petty. That's petty. That's ridiculous. You know, it's like, you got to be out of your mind to go to that level. Well, yeah, you know, out of my mind. And then, you know, okay, we'll put the tree up because you do the thing, because I love Christmas, and, you know. And then I was talking to my daughter, and, you know, about the other daughter who lives in Albuquerque. And she says, Mom, she says, we were talking about Christmas and they've got these 3 humongous dogs. And I got these horrible cat and dog allergies. And she says, we don't know if we're going to have somebody to house sit the dogs and, you know, about coming there, but we want to, and we'll see what we've got. So again, it was like, I got totally bummed, and I'm thinking, why did I bother putting up the damn tree, you know, and the lights, and it's such a hassle, and, you know, why? And then it's just like moving beyond that, you know? And again, it's that thing of like me not wanting to acknowledge these little dependencies that really are not little dependencies. They're not little at all. And going to God and having that willingness to go to God, to which I like to tell myself that I do it really easily and do it really well. And I do it only because my back's up against the wall and I got no place else to go. You know, I got no place else to go. You know, it reminded me of you, you know, sitting in that church, and it's like, what do I have? You know, what do I have? What do I have to lose? And anyway, we're going to have a house full of people for Christmas, and I have no idea who they are, but everybody's invited. So if you all are here in Santa Fe, come on down, you know, you're welcome, you know, more the merrier. So anyway, these dependencies that I don't even know, and there's a part of me that doesn't want to know them, and it makes me want to cry when I think of that, you know. I don't even want to know that I have some of these little dependencies, because sometimes it feels like that's all I have. You know, it's like, I don't want to let go one more time. I don't want to let go of one more thing. Surely there's something. And, you know, when you're talking about your dad, it's like, God, surely I can do this. Surely I can manage this, you know. And having been there with my mom and my dad, my heart just goes out to you. It really does, Mark. And I'll say some prayers for you. I love you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Juanita. Deanna?
I'm Deanna, I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much for sharing. You know, I've been attending this meeting I guess I started attending this meeting the first week of COVID, and this is actually the first time that I'm sharing on this meeting, and I've only missed 2 meetings. So I love this meeting. It has changed my recovery. It's been life-changing, really. I'm very nervous talking, so I'm just gonna to say thank you for being here, and thank you for keeping this meeting going, and for always being so truly honest and open and just genuine, because it gives me the courage to look at myself. And I'm so hard on myself and so afraid to look inside because I'm afraid of what I'm going to see. And to come on here and see you guys with so much recovery be so vulnerable and honest, it gives me courage to take a look for myself. And it's just been amazing. So thank you.
Kate Y. from Akron.
Thank you, Dawn. I too love this meeting and have been coming to it for, I don't know, I'm not good with time, but probably a year. And Mark, your talk really touched my heart, and your honesty, your vulnerability, your transparency was really beautiful. Just thank you for being you and doing what you do. The dependencies, it's easy. It was easy for me to see my dependencies on things like material things. And that was kind of easier to pick up on and deal with. But that my dependency, for example, on my husband, who used to work as a physician and had to retire with Parkinson's disease, and now he has Parkinson's dementia. I see my dependency on my husband being my husband, and I'm losing him. It's one thing to adjust from being married to a doctor to being married to a sick man. But now he's losing his memory and who he is. And it's a tough one. It's a tough journey. And I pray all the time, and I do have to think, do I think I believe God's going to carry me through. And I do believe I get strength from God to deal every day with the new stressors with my husband. He falls a lot. It's just a rough deal. But is he, my daughters, I have 2 daughters, and sometimes, I have to say, do you have them? When things seem really crazy, it's like, do you really have them? Yeah, because I don't know, it's not looking that great here, but so I have to pray for my relationship with God to be just everything. And it waxes and wanes, and there are dark days, dark hours, and then I call my sponsor and hear her beautiful voice and fills me with love, and see you all here and feel a connection with you all, even though I can't go to many meetings in person anymore because leaving my husband isn't something I can do at this time. But I do feel like I know some of you who don't know me at all, but I feel like I know Tom and Juanita, for example. They're just awesome, and Dawn and Mary Thayer, and some of you all. That I just am real grateful that you all keep showing up. And again, Mark, thank you so much for your share. It meant a lot.
Thank you, Kate. How about Belinda from Nashville?
Okay. Hold on a minute. Just darn it. Yeah, I agree with whoever said it feels like from the beginning, since I've been here, it just keeps getting deeper and deeper. And I too am touched by the honesty and deep reflection that the speakers give. each week. And I think I was really, I think I needed, you know, I definitely needed to hear what I've heard in the last couple of weeks. And it really hit me last week in the part where it says, when it was talking about dependencies, and he said, even upon AA. And I was like, what? He said, don't even depend on AA. Because, and I think I said something about it. I can't remember what I've said, but like I did when my husband died, I had no idea what all I depended on him for. And now I'm trying to figure out who I am, you know, just because that was, you know, 40 something years of codependence. And because we got sober at the same time, about 10 and a half years ago. But I said something to a friend who has a lot more time about the AA part, because I'd been going to a whole lot of meetings, even more meetings, and more, and listening to more. And she said, no, you need to be right where you are. But also be there for other people, not just in the program, but just to be for other people, because I don't think you can give too much. And I can't, there's still that part of me that says I don't do enough, you know, and I can't do everything that I want to do or even can do. But there's still all that, you know, I'm sorry. I should stop because I'm losing it now. It just makes me think really hard. And sometimes I don't need to think. So anyway, I'm going to stop. I know what it was making me think of tonight was that just that my kids are so awesome. And, you know, my son and his husband are flying from Hawaii to New York, and then one in New York's having the whole Christmas thing. And, you know, I can't wait to see my granddaughter, but I hate cold. So I'm dependent on warmth. But this year I decided I'm going to take a whole suitcase and I'm going to double up my clothes. Like if I buy a pair of boots, I'm going to buy 2 pair of boots. They were cheap, but anyway, or sweatshirts. And I'm just going to take them up there. I'm not going to complain about being cold. I can always put on more clothes. Well, I have to be grateful for. I'm just learning a whole lot. I'm going to stop. Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Belinda. Let me see. Hollywood Squares, David H., Toronto.
Hey everyone, Dave, alcoholic. Almost made it, 9 more minutes. Yeah, thanks so much, Mark, and everyone. Like, you know, everyone's saying, I really am getting a lot out of this meeting. I'm really enjoying it. I've been coming for the last couple of months. One thing that's kind of, I guess, been on my mind, and you know, it really speaks to, you know, the reading, this idea that how do I get my unconscious in line with what I know to be right and want and is good, or whatever the line is. I'm like, you know, I've been sober for 11 years and things are good, and I've, you know, grown a lot, especially since COVID. These Zoom meetings help so much. But like, I have this like seeking approval wanting to be liked. Even now, like I'm a little nervous talking to, I think I'm the only one in the country here. I don't know any of these people, but I have this, I want to come across as saying, being liked or saying something that's really profound or whatever. And it's just like, I know it's ridiculous. I mean, for years, I'm like, it doesn't matter, like I want to be genuine and there's kind of this fine line of, like Mark, you were saying, like, and what you did in your share is to connect and to give love and that's helpful, and to, share your experience. And this is what we do, right? To, like, I want to connect and I want to help, but it's that fine line where I'm also kind of want you to like it, it's like, give me a pat on the back, or like, I'll feel good that you like that. And it's really, it is kind of a fine line, so anyhow, I'm just that was just kind of on my mind a bit. And it's like, yeah, it's just been ongoing, right? It's one of these things that I've known about and wanted to be free of for a long time. Not that it, like, I guess I've made progress. It's not like I'm weighed down by this all the time, but it's just one of these things where I'd like to grow out of it. And I know it to be like ridiculous at this point and immature. And I think that the solution of giving love and, giving more unconditional love as it is helping with this. But anyways, yeah, just thought I would share that. That's on my mind. That's something that's just, I've been thinking of. So anyways, thanks everyone, and hope everyone has a good 24th. Thanks again.
Thank you, David. So the other day, I'm gonna share this, and the other day, so I normally am, I don't necessarily do a lot of the memes and stuff, but the other day I was on Facebook and I saw a Santa Claus, and essentially Juanita had posted it, I think, and I read it, and it was such a thing about the spirit of Christmas. Santa Claus is in the gift of giving with no expectation of having a thank you or anything. It is literally in the gift, isn't the person receiving it, it's the person that's giving it, receives the gift. And it's the gift of giving. And that's probably one of the one things this year that I reposted because I'm just like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And to me, it is absolutely in the spirit of what this reading says. The real current cannot flow until I am putting it out. And I want to draw everything to me and get and receive, and what's going to happen if I give? Are they going to acknowledge that I gave? Whatever. And I realized what a beautiful thing it was to say that. And Mary Thayer also said it to me in a different kind of way recently, that Santa Claus, the spirit of Christmas, is that thing in my heart that wants to give something to you. And so often it is trapped in that dependency to need to receive something or get what I want, and it's trapped. And I think that the whole idea of having that real current flow, the real love flow, is the whole thing with Christmas. And I give that to y'all because it is December the 16th. And the next time we meet, it's interesting because, if only I could really do that all year instead of just at Christmas. What a beautiful place this world would be. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. Do you have anything else to add, Mark?
Actually, I don't. Well, maybe I'll just say thanks to Dawn. And thanks to however this meeting really started, and because it really has changed me in a way I'm not sure how yet. And so thank you all for being part of that. That's all.
Thank you again. Sam's not here, so I'm going to try to do its closing. And I hope I can give it in the spirit of giving. We'll go to our internal rooms and say the prayer that makes you closest to that source of love. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Dawn.
Thanks, Dawn.
Thanks,
Mark.
Mark.
It's great to hear you.
Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you, everybody.
Thanks, Dawn.
Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Great
Thanks,
meeting.
Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a great
everyone.
one.
Thanks,
See you guys.
Dawn.
Thank you,
Night,
John.
all.
Thank you, Mark, so much. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Mark. You.
Night,
Thank
everybody.
you, Mark.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Dawn.